Hi everyone, John with the Eco Guys here, and I'm here today to answer questions submitted. Now, I've done videos where I've answered questions submitted through way of recycling, reducing, reusing the environment, blah, 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 blah. Uh, but I also get a lot of personal questions. Okay, all right, all right. So I've compiled those, and I'm going to answer some of those. Now, I'm not going to give out names of people who ask these questions. That's not necessary. I'm just going to say the question and answer the question, so you guys get to know the green guy here a little bit better, maybe, and why I think I'm so smart about the environment and this and that and the other thing. So maybe your question was in here. Now, these are questions that were compiled in emails, messages. I show up on people's lives all the time. So if you're a YouTuber and you're doing a live, you just may see the Eco Guys pop up on your live and just say hi. Questions there, as well as when I meet people in person, I get questions asked, and I've compiled some of them. So here we go. I think one of the biggest questions I ever get asked is, how did I get into being, now I don't like to use the word environmentalist, so I'm going to say being green. And that is an interesting story. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I had a brother at the time. He has since passed away. He passed away when he was 16 and I was 12. So, yeah, no. Anyway, so, but at the time, he was involved in the drama club, the astronomy club, and all that in junior high school. And they were raising money by doing something called a paper drive. And he was explaining to me that basically he's going to go on a Saturday at the school, and they're going to have people delivering papers, and they put in a big truck and they take it to the recycle center and turn it in and get money, raise money for the club that he was involved in. And being an 8 or 9-year-old, 10-year-old, somewhere around in there, I was thinking to myself, I believe I was 8. I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. You're going to take, for what I perceive as garbage, old paper, and you're going to turn it in and get cash? Well, that's an interesting concept. Okay. Now, the junior high school was about half a mile or so away from where we lived. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, bro, I'll help you out. I'll get my little wagon, and I will walk to the school, and as I go there, I'll go through the neighborhood, because it's at the other end of the neighborhood, and I'll collect newspapers, and on the way I'll knock on doors. Do you have any newspapers you'd like to donate for my brother's fundraiser at the school? And so I did that. I had a wagon at the time with these little wooden, kind of like you see scrappers today, these little wooden sides. And I filled up that wagon so full, it was so hard for me to actually pull it into the parking lot, and it was so funny. And I gave it the papers, and they threw the papers up in this big truck, and I'm just amazed at this. You're amazed at this. So I called one of my little friends, and I said, you know, what was going on there at the school with my brother and his friends? And he goes, oh yeah, did you also know that on your way to like the 7-Eleven or the Cumberland Farms or whatever convenience store you have, if you pick up soda bottles, they'll give you like 5 to 10 cents per soda bottle. I'm like, what? Yeah, and I see soda bottles on the ground all the time. Coca-Cola bottles, Sprite bottles, whatever, on the ground all the time. I had no idea if you take it back. At that time, of course, we're talking late 70s. So that's how old I am. Yeah. I was early 80s. I was like amazed at this concept that you could take this garbage and you could turn it and get money. And then as I was talking to people, they said, oh yeah, if you find aluminum cans, aluminum cans, you can actually crush those up, take those into the aluminum can turn-in place down the street there, and you get money for those too. So I started learning at a young age all about the business aspect of recycling. You turn these things in, you can get money. Paper, cardboard, aluminum, metal. I was amazed at such a young age you could do this. So being the inquisitive person I was, and this is way before Google and all this, I started looking into this concept. And then that's when I started learning about what recycling was all about. True recycling. what it really was about. And you have to understand, at this time, we didn't have a lot of plastic bottles in the stores. There were still glass bottles. Things were in metal and aluminum cans. Plastics wasn't a thing, but they were starting to come out, and they were starting to become a thing. And so I learned to eat as well in the early 80s that you can recycle plastics back into plastics again and other items. And I didn't know that. Now we've come such a long way where plastics is concerned. Now you can just about turn anything into anything with recycled plastics. In fact, there's a video on the Eco Guys, if you look it up, where this company turns plastics that's not easily recyclable, like soda bottles, Coke bottles, detergent bottles, are so easily recycled. That's what everyone wants. But the other plastics, like the surround, like this on this computer, this plastic in the mouse here, the plastic in your cell phones, is not easily recyclable because they're usually PVC or polyurethane or something like that. But this one company will take all those and they turn it into fencing, benches, picnic tables, those bumpers that make you stop when you park into a parking lot, and those little curbs. They turn it into everything that you could possibly imagine, and that keeps it out of the landfill, keeps recycling going, and you don't have to build these things out of virgin material and things like that. So we've come a long way, but I'm getting away from the question. So that's how I got into it. I started learning how beneficial, not only can you make some scratch, but how beneficial recycling was to the earth, which I've always loved the earth. I was 10 years old when I had my first landscaping business at 10. And I employed all my little friends. We cut lawns, and I learned all about landscaping and plants at a really, really young age. And so I really loved the environment from day one. And I could never understand people throwing trash. I mean, I was the 11 and 12-year-old kid walking to school, picking up trash off the ground to put it in its proper place when I got to school. I could never understand stuff floating in the waters. I love fishing. I love the lakes. I loved everything environmental and outside, and we were just killing it and polluting it like you could imagine. And at a young age, this was a concept to me that was ridiculous. And when I learned that you can recycle these things and reuse them, and then the cost is lower, it puts less bad stuff in the air, I was hooked. So that's when I started recycling and becoming the pest that I am today to everyone around me. I'm the guy who pulls the stuff out of the garbage can at the office. At home, I'm always pulling stuff out of the trash can, putting it in the recycle, saying, "Come on, guys, what's y'all's problem?" Because I live with roommates. Also, they put like plastic bags, like bread bags, in the mixed recyclables that go to the curb. I say, no, you can't do that. You can't put these in your curbside recycling in most municipalities. You've got to bring these back to the store. So yeah, I that's what I became. So that's how it happened. A unplanned trip to pick up newspapers on a Saturday to help my brother raise money for his drama club at school. That's what started the whole thing. Next question here. How did you start the Eco Guys? How did the Eco Guys get started? That's actually asked a lot. I've always been a proponent of being green. And anytime that there was anything going on, I was always right there. My very first radio show that I had was on, 7:40 a.m. in Orlando, Florida. And it was in the morning time. I believe it was on a Saturday. It was called Central Florida Environmental, and it was a rousing wake up and smell the coffee. And basically, what I would do is I would give hints and tips. Excuse me, too much coffee. I'll back it up. I was giving hints and suggestions and tips on what you can recycle, how you can recycle it, how you can reuse things, and I had this radio show that I was paying for out of my pocket. I did have a sponsor, a recycle center that threw money my way, but for the most part I was paying for this sucker out of my pocket. It was a brokered show. It was called Central Florida Environmental, and that was back, I want to say in the early 80s. Early 90s. And it was pretty successful. I had it for a while until I just really couldn't afford to keep going. It was expensive, and I let it go. But I had a lot of great guests, and a lot of great people were calling and saying, hey, I never knew. I even had the local Fox network do a story that, because it was like, I didn't know this stuff was recyclable, and I did it with such energy. And then after that, I just kept going. This is like when the internet was new, so I didn't have Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all that other good stuff to be able to broadcast all this information from. So basically, it was word of mouth. It was just me getting out there and just doing things after the radio show. Years later, I was married, and my wife at the time, no longer my wife, but the wife at the time, and her were sitting there one night, and I told her, I said, as I'm smoking my cigar out on the porch, I looked at her and I said, I would really love to push another talk radio show about the environment on there, because it's something that's so needed. At the time, and this was 2008, 2009, we were going through a lot of environmental catastrophes at the time, and a lot of people just didn't seem to care. The big push on the curbside recycling was starting to wane, and people were just not giving a damn about and I knew if we didn't care, we would have an environmental catastrophe years and years from now, from that point. So I knew I had to do something, and I told her, I said, we're making really good money. We had a couple of businesses, and one main business was a courier company, pickup and delivery. And I said, since we have this extra money, I'm pretty certain we can find sponsors, and let's have another brokered show. And we'll call it, let's think of a name. We threw names back and forth and all this, and finally I said, what about the Eco Guys? Because I was definitely planning on bringing in a friend of mine, and on the air, and the Eco Guys, he's known as Colin Green, because he's got broadcast experience, and he's a smart guy, and he's like the straight guy to my stupidness. And I said, the three of us could do the show. We could call it the Eco Guys. Sounded good, she said. Sounds great. Let's go for it. So we got the local power company, OUC, the reliable one, Orlando Utilities Commission, to sponsor the show, and we put it on a station called, what was the name of that station? I can't remember. 540 something. I think it was 540 or 580 AM. The funny thing about it is when you talk environmental, all of a sudden you've got a lot of people thinking environmental wackos, tree huggers, which I am not. Or somebody with an agenda, somebody against oil, somebody that's got this huge political agenda. They go to political immediately, which is not the case with me. I live in reality, not any kind of agenda. So we actually, the station that we found to be the cheapest was a very conservative radio station. They had like Rush Limbaugh and all these other kind of people. It was very conservative. And we're going to show up on a Saturday afternoon and talk about the environment. This was an uphill battle. But we decided to put the show together. The Eco Guys was all formed and put together at that time, and we had our talk show. And you can hear it if you go to Google and you Google the Eco Guys podcast. Our podcast will show up, and I think it's maybe a dozen or so of our shows from back in 2009, 2010. And you can hear Nisi, which is my wife at the time, myself, and Colin Green, and a cast of other characters, doing the show. And the show, surprisingly, was a huge hit. We got more phone calls sometimes. Now, not all of our shows are on the podcast, so sometimes it's not representative. But we got more calls on that radio show than the paid during the weekday people talking conservative stuff. We got more calls. And in fact, there was a talk show host called, what was his name? Oh my gosh, I forgot now. But he was really, really popular here locally, got really upset and complained to the management that we were getting more calls than he was, and we seemed to be more popular, and we're a brokered paying our own way show on a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we had people calling and saying, hey, are you Al Goreans? Are you this? Are you that? It's absolutely not. We're not that at all. We're just here, like Bill Nye the Science Guy, like whatever do you want to say. We're just here to tell you the truth. and easy ways to be green. You don't have to be political to be green. Okay? And if anyone tells you that you shouldn't recycle or you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that because of some kind of political agenda, business thought process, you need to ignore them and think about this. This is just the way I always tell everyone, conservative, liberal, I don't care what you are. This is a very fragile planet, despite what some people will make you think. And would you treat this planet like you would treat your child? Would you throw trash all over your child? No. You know, and it just makes sense to reuse things and recycle things rather than throw it out. Let's just put it this way. If I gave you a glass and it had a little bit of deadly chemical in it, just a little bit, maybe chlorine, let's just say a glass with a little bit of chlorine in it down at the bottom, and a glass with a lot of chlorine, you had to drink one. Which one would you drink? So you got to look at that as recycling. We could put a little bit of bad stuff in the air by recycling, or a lot of bad stuff in the air and breathe that in and kill everything just because it's politically correct in the way that I think it should be, or my agenda people think it should be. So we were on a very conservative radio station, but we won everyone over because we were very honest and we didn't have agendas. And people said, well, should I give up my gas car? I said, no. No, you shouldn't give up your gas-fueled vehicle. Okay? No, there's no reason to do that. Just make sure it's tuned up, running good, not leaking chemicals all over the ground, and maintain your vehicle and drive as much as you want. And that would shock people that this green guy is saying, get in your car and drive. Enjoy your vacation. Drive. Drive. Buy gasoline. Just make sure your car is efficient and fixed and running right and not leaking all over the place. I tell you what, I'll just put my cup of water underneath your car, and whatever drips out, you can have that for dinner. You're giving it to everyone else. Just make sure your car is in working order and then drive. It really shocked everyone how we were on the show and how honest we were. And we bust myths, and we didn't have agendas, and we just said it how it was, and we became the most popular show, an environmental show, on a conservative radio station. That was like, but that's how the Eco Guys got started, and now we do everything online. Possibility, maybe next year, we're talking 2024, 2025, we might be coming back to the radio again. But for now, this is good. YouTube and everything else, people who want to watch will watch eventually, I guess. So there you go. Let's see here. Next question. Personal question, but this is kind of like, what do you personally think is the single most important thing that people should be recycling but they're not? I love this question, and it's real simple because there's hundreds and hundreds of tons of it that go to the landfill every single day, and people don't realize it's recyclable. Now, I know I have possession of this, but I swear this is just for demonstration purposes only. Everyone will get these. Plastic grocery shopping bags, which eventually, Winn-Dixie, how about that? Which eventually will be outlawed in every state. Just a little bit sure is happening. Okay, so everyone knows that you can take these back to your store to be recycled, and they make these into great things. They make these right back into bags again. In fact, I have a very good authority that Winn-Dixie, which is a store in the southeast, a grocery store in the southeast chain, these are actually made from recycled bags. So kudos. But did you also know when you take those back that you can take your bread bags with it? Yeah. Ziploc bags? Yeah. Any kind of plastic, these little things that I get my incense put in, unfortunately, they put them in these little plastic bags. Yeah. You put that microwave peas or carrots in the bag, rinse it out. Yeah. You can take that back to the store too. I think plastic bags and plastic wrap is the one thing that people don't realize that they can recycle and is easily recyclable, and they don't. So when you take your plastic bags back to the store, which you shouldn't have in the first place, but I'm sure you see them blowing around in the wind and you grab them like I do, take them back. Yeah, any place. So I would say that would be the single one thing that is really recyclable, and people don't realize that they can recycle any type of plastic bags. Can go back to the store. Despite what the store says, despite what the sign says, it can. Okay. I remember one time I used to ride a motorcycle, and I'm going down the highway on a motorcycle, and there's this bag I see way ahead of me floating around. The cars are going by. It's going up in the air. It was just floating around like this up in the air, and it comes low, and I come through with my motorcycle, and I reach down, and I scoop that bag up, and I put it in my little cubby hole right in front of my motorcycle, and these people drive up next to me are doing this. Yay, way to go, yeah, because they knew that bag was being scooped up to be recycled. I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing here, risking my life to pick up a plastic bag. Oh my God. Anyway, what is the one thing that you like the most about being green? One thing that I like the most about being green, I like a clean environment. There you go. I think that's probably what we're all facing here, is the clean environment. Where did you get your knowledge from? Well, I said that before. Basically, I started when I was 8 years old, and I studied really hard about the environment, about recycling. I talked to the experts, and I do my own research instead of listening to someone yap and then believing what they say. I do my own independent research about everything that I do or I deal with. But starting at 8 years old, and just growing up, and then just that's my main thing was recycling and learning about it, and it grew with me. The whole concept of recycling grew with me. So as it's growing with me, I'm learning about it, and that's how I got my knowledge. And it's just years and years of experience and years and years of seeking the truth behind everything. Where do you hope the Eco Guys go from here? Well, I really hope that why is everyone blaming global warming on what's going on in the weather and all this? I said it on the radio show, so if you listen to the podcast, you'll probably hear me say it. This is 12, 13 years ago. I said, look, in 12 to 13 years, we're going to have an environmental catastrophe, the likes that we have never seen. We're going to have weather. We're going to have environmental changes. It's going to be massive, and it's going to be deadly. Why is this happening? Is it because we're burning fossil fuels and eating away at the ozone layer? Yeah, I'm not really ready to say that is the absolute reason. I'm really not. I'm willing to say it's a little bit deeper than that, and no pun intended, but it all starts with the oceans. There is more plastic in the oceans than we have on ground right now, believe it or not. There are hundreds of millions of tons of plastic floating in the ocean right now, and what this plastic does is it eventually will sink. Most of it's floating, but it eventually will sink, and it goes down, and it kills the fish. It kills the plant life that we have under the ocean. That warms the ocean. As the oceans warm, then we have worse storms. We have worse hurricanes. I live in Florida. Right now, our concern is how bad the hurricanes are getting. Normally, in a regular hurricane season in the past, we would have maybe one Category 5 hurricane in maybe 2 or 3 years. You'd have one really, really bad one. Now we have several Category 5 hurricanes every year. Luckily, a lot of them they go off and they don't hit land. But when they do hit land, and we've felt it here in Florida, they could be catastrophic and they could be deadly. We're going to have an increase in that, so much more because we're warming the oceans is what we're doing. How are we warming the oceans? We're polluting the oceans. We are killing off the plant life. And another thing too is we are a country where we just build and build and build and build and build. And we're chopping down trees all over the world the size of Texas every single day. Every single day. These trees are first what helps cool the planet, gives us oxygen. So we're literally cutting off our oxygen supply and then thinking, why do we have so much pollutants in the air? When trees actually take the pollutants that we put in the air out of the air and they convert it into oxygen for us to breathe and stay alive. Wonderful trees. So what are we going to do? We're going to cut all y'all down. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So, well, John, then what do we build out of, huh? Well, We have enough plastics that we throw away every single day to build enough plastic lumber, which is straighter, stronger, better, and lasts longer than conventional lumber, to build literally hundreds of thousands of homes a day. That's how much plastic we throw away that could be converted and recycled into dimensional lumber to build things with. And these things don't rot. They stay, they're straight, you don't have a lot of waste. I've seen a lot of builders will throw away tons of wood that gets delivered because they're warped or they're not straight or they're not perfect or with blah, 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 blah. And these things can be made. Let's say these people need 2x4 by 6s, 2x4 by 4s. Well, you have to cut this down. Now you got wood waste where you could just order these things, 2x4 by 4 plastics. They come, you can cut them like you cut wood, nail them. Perfect. And they're also much more fire retardant than wood. Steel girders. We have enough steel sitting around that we're recycling every single day. We can make steel studs, and a lot of people do build with steel. They love it. Cuts easy, straight, always perfect, and you're making a total recyclable home or a building. Something happens to it, it gets destroyed or whatever, you got to tear it down. You recycle all that steel into more. That's how we do it. Instead of being so dependent on wood that we have to cut down trees that we have to breathe with, that cools the planet, we can go to these other alternatives. We have so much plastic in these things, plastic in these glasses, plastic everywhere. These things can be converted into lumber and building supplies like you can't imagine. You can almost do anything these days with recycled plastics. Even make hats. This hat was made from recycled plastics. This shirt made from recycled plastics. It's a nice shirt too. Look at that. So that is my main concern. Is not fossil fuels. It's what we're doing to the oceans and the trees that cool the earth. That should be our main concern at this point. Is fixing that and making some international laws as well as local laws, and just saying we don't want any more lumber. And then they say, well, you're going to put all the lumber mills out of business. Oh, well, boo-hoo. The lumber mills can retool and make steel. The lumber mills can retool and make plastics, girders out of recycled plastics. There's enough of that on this earth. Oh, my God, there's so much plastic that can be recycled. It will never run out. You'll never run out of plastics for what we already have on this planet. So there you go. What do you think is the biggest misconception in recycling today? One particular item that's recyclable. I think I already covered that with plastic bags, but there's another thing too is styrofoam. I got a bag full of styrofoam behind me here. Talk about being ready. This is just stuff that I collect. Styrofoam cups, styrofoam food trays, and all that I have in a bag here, ready to go back to the store. A lot of people think the styrofoam is not recyclable. It absolutely, positively is, and you could turn that into all kinds of polystyrene's turned into all kinds of products, and it literally cuts. I think it was the last thing I looked at is it used to be half, but they've made it to where it's a quarter of the amount of pollutants that were put in the air by recycling styrofoam back into styrofoam rather than making it from virgin material. Just a quarter of the cost of the bad stuff. Where basically if you make it from virgin material, you have this much. If you recycle it, you might have that much. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. And here's something else too. Despite what people think, styrofoam will never, ever biodegrade. Ever. Ever, ever, never. Sorry, I don't care what you think. It won't happen. Okay? I'm sorry, folks. It may break down into little pieces, but it will never biodegrade. Styrofoam just doesn't do it. It can't. In fact, I always tell people, remember when the McDonald's used to have it in the styrofoam? Unless those styrofoam trays were recycled or incinerated, the styrofoam trays you ate that fillet of fish from back in the 80s is still on this planet today. Still there. It doesn't biodegrade. So go ahead and recycle it. That's the best thing to do. So I think that's the biggest misconception product that people don't think is, because I run into people, I didn't know that was recyclable. Yeah, well, why do you think they say styrofoam trays at all the grocery stores deposit here? Because it is recyclable. And that's what you do. You take it back to the store. I think I've answered most of the questions that I was asked. I hope this was helpful. I don't want this to go on too long. I've been going on long enough, almost 30 minutes of me yapping, but I wanted to answer these questions. If you have questions, it's really simple. theecoguys@yahoo.com. You can catch the Eco Guys, of course, on YouTube. You could just Google the Eco Guys. We will pop up everywhere. We do have a Facebook page. It's hardly ever posted on. I need to be a little bit more posty on that. And we have an Instagram that, again, need to be a little bit more posty on that. But definitely this channel. And always, if you have a question. Also, we have a website, The Eco Guys. theecoguys. Thank you. See, and I'm not going to edit out these mistakes. I'm human. I will blooper everything. theecoguys.info. So that's well, thank you. There it is right there. www.theecoguys.info is a website, and it's got everything you need to know and more. Oh, there was one other question. Where did our catchphrase come on Get Green, Get Wild? And if you listen to the videos, at the very end, you hear what sounds like children chanting, "Get green, get wild, get green, get wild." The reason we came up with that is a double meaning. One, it's our names from the show. You know, my last name and Colin Green's last name, Get Green, Get Wild. Plus, we want you to get wild and crazy about being green. Those were my daughters and Mr. Colin Green's daughter chanting that back in 2009 is when we recorded that. And Get Green, Get Wild was just kind of something that just popped out of my mouth during, I believe it was one of the very first shows. I just said, Get Green, Get Wild. I was like, I like that concept. And so that's what it is, Get Green, Get Wild. So I say that now. That was another question that was asked. So get green, get wild, recycle, reduce, reuse. And we'll see you on the next video. Comment below and let me know what you think. Have any questions about me or about the Eco Guys or anything along those lines? You let me know and I will answer those questions if they're appropriate. There has been some inappropriate ones, and no, I'm not going to answer those. All right, y'all take good care. See ya.
Danger. The emergency destruct system is now activated. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.